All right, everything's cleaned up. Both of the front struts are in and unseized and ready to be adjusted. I'm going to make sure I don't hook anything else up and measure them both the exact same way. And this time we're going to go off of the other side, because after pulling this and confirming that the cartridge is about 5/8 of an inch-ish shorter than the other one, we had the measurement right. So either way, we'll get it as close as we can, and then when we get it on the ground, if it needs adjusted, at least we know we can do that pretty easily just by throwing a jack under it real quick, popping the tire off, and making a quick adjustment. But yeah, I think that's where we're going to leave it for this weekend. The little bit of time that I got to work on it, I think I made some really great strides. So the front suspension is completely refreshed, and after we get them adjusted, should be able to pop those wheels back on and then set the alignment in the front. At the same time, we'll actually straighten out the front wheels, set up the string and straighten out the front wheels. And before I mess with the tie rods, I'll actually try to pop that steering wheel off and put that one on. And if these are set correctly in the front, then we should be able to just straighten it out with the steering wheel swap. So anyways, that's where we're going to leave it for this weekend. All right, we got the welder all set up, following the instruction manual. Pretty simple. I'll do a little walkthrough once I get out into the garage, because I got the blast heater going. Wanted to make sure I had it set up right so it would weld correctly. It does a pretty damn good job, especially compared to my old one. Just so many different settings, but I keep having issues. Once I got it to the right flux core setting, I kept blowing the fuse whenever, because it was drawing too much current. It's pulling 20 amps, 100 volts pretty consistently, which for a 110 is kind of tough. So I'll show you what I have to do in order to get a good bead. So I did have it plugged in through this extension cord into this outlet. Typically with my old welder, it didn't have an issue and never blew it. But once I found the right setting and the right amperage, I get like probably 1 inch, not even, on the bead, and the welder would shut off, because this outlet on the series around the kitchen goes into protect mode. So what I had to do is pull out my oven, and I'm going to unplug that bitch. The flux, or the Weaver, came with this dog bone for a 220 outlet. So I'm going to plug that in and see if I can't get a little more consistent current without the fuse blowing, because that's on 20 amp fuse. Actually 220s, I think. Either way, that's a 220 outlet, so it should be good. So I'll go ahead and plug this in, and then we'll go back out and test it out and see if we can't get a little bit better bead. Well, that didn't work. That's a 4-prong 220, and this is 3, so outlet wasn't a match. So the alternative, I'm going to see if this plug will fit in my generator, and I'm going to just put some fresh gas in the generator, set it outside, and run this cable or extension cord underneath the garage door. All right, not the best weld, but this is where I started, and it was on, I think, MIG manual with FE. So it automatically selected like iron or something. And you can see there's spatter and it's very inconsistent. And then I read through the manual and switched it to flux on the readout, and then made a small adjustment in the amperage. And then it started laying down these, I think that circle right there, nice little circular puddles, which were a lot smoother, this one especially, and as I got through it, it smoothed out and there was a lot less spatter. Of course, it separates right here, so unless you have a backer on there, it's just going to eat away at the metal like that and do a blowout. But right here specifically is where it started to clean up a little bit and become a little bit more consistent. It seemed like the welding amperage and the metal that I had it selected on was a little more compatible. And then I turned it around and did these. So it kept blowing my fuse because I'm on a 110 with this, but it sealed that off without blowing out the pipe like this, which is what I was having issues with my old one. But through here, sealed it up pretty nice. There's a little hollow spot right there, but overall that sealed it up, and that was good for a test. I was able to get the amperage. So I decided to hook up my generator, which was basically a dedicated 120 amp outlet. So I got the generator running outside, and I put it on, I put it on 20 volts, 49 amps, which basically is one of the lowest settings. I mean, I turned it almost all the way down, and I was able to get in here and tack weld my exhaust work. So it did a really good job, a lot less spatter than the other one. And I was able to actually get this exhaust adjusted so that it's centered. It's not sticking out too far. You can see it sticks out just right past the MagnaFlow, which is what it's supposed to do. And it's relatively centered in there without touching the top or the sides. So overall, that's pretty damn good for a little homemade exhaust kit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that off, and now that it's tacked really well, I'm going to put some permanent welds on it and then put it back up for good. All right, we got it retacked. Was able to get a decent one there. We made an adjustment. You can see where I had to cut through this one, and then I slid it out, I don't know, about an inch from there. And then there's a little bit of play in this coupler, so I was able to turn it back a little bit to pull the tip back in. It sits right there, and then it's pretty centered on both sides, and I was able to tack that in pretty decent. So these welds, you can see, are from the old welding machine, and we're using the Timu welder, which is a Weaver. It's like a 5-in-1 or something, MIG-TIG. I've got it set up on flux setting right now, pretty low amps, because I don't want to blow a fuse in the house. All I got is 110 right now. I got this pulled out, and I need some more propane for heat because I'm running a little low. So I'm gonna go try to find a 220 adapter for a stove plug, because this 220 does not work. I don't have a 220 outlet like that. I need the 4-prong 220. If I can find a 220 adapter, then maybe I might be able to use the stove outlet and have a nice consistent source of power, because right now it's running off of my generator outside, but the generator is only 4,000 peak watts, which is just barely enough to get a small weld, just the same as the 110 outlet. So I'm gonna go get some more propane and then see if I can find a 220 plug adapter for the stove plug, run the extension cord back inside, and see if I can't finish welding this thing up. We're gonna weld this one, and that one, and then I'll probably tack weld that one, because this whole thing slid off pretty easily from that coupler. So that's the plan. Today we're just trying to work on getting these welds cleaned up so that I can leave the exhaust alone, and then I'll be able to put some stuff back together maybe get it down and get the fender off and a couple other parts that I want to paint, set up a temporary paint booth in here. Either that or at least prep them so that I can take them over to my in-laws and paint them, because they're out of town till Thursday and I have tomorrow off. So we'll do that. All right, transition to venue. We got a solid current source here. It's Mikey's garage. So I got a little bit welded and it just kept sputtering out. So now that we have a decent current source, I'm gonna get this thing situated and we'll try this again. All right, we're back at my garage. Could probably clean this weld up a little bit, but the clean metal ended up not being too shabby for DIY style. I mean, I need to work on my voltage, still getting kind of used to the welder, and had a couple trouble spots where it was a little too high heat, kept arcing, so it's a work in progress. But I mean, for what the use of this is, it's just going to be the straight pipe. I think it's all right. I'm going to take a grinder real quick and hit this, clean up these welds just a little bit in a couple spots, but then we'll go ahead and throw this back on the car. All right, we got the steering wheel swapped out because I think I might have actually sold the roller. And just got a wild hair. I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna go ahead and pop off the side skirts. See how much damage we got and see if we got enough to repair. So I'm gonna try to set up a tripod for this at a good angle so that you guys can see all the shit that's gonna fall off here. And I got the end bolts done. We gotta put a little plastic pry bar down there and pop it off and see what we got going on. It's already kind of scary, but we're gonna lose these regardless, so we gotta fix it. This is the last bit of rust, aside from some random surface rust, and like really unseen spots. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off. And by Band-Aid, I mean side skirts. So let's set you up. Okay, well that took 10 minutes. And this is what we're dealing with. So I don't know how much of this is sealable, but looks like we lost a pretty big chunk of the inner support. So I may need to get an inner support and see how bad it is down here, because most of this is straight up fucking rusted out. Fuck balls. So that's a pretty big hole. And you're not going to be able to weld to that, because that's the inner support butted to the frame, butted to the rocker panels. So that's pretty nasty. Fucker. That sucks. All right. We'll just keep digging at this, and looks like it's going to be inner and outer. If I can even, I may need to get a strip of steel, tack it onto that, and then put the inner on, and then put the outer on, just so that'll be reinforced, and then grind all this down as good as I can. It's not going to be fully repaired, but at least seal it so that it's not exposed anymore, and then stop the rust on this piece, because that's not really going to be fixable on this side. Yeah, son of a bitch. Okay. All right, so I pulled off the driver's side rocker panel, or side skirt, and the driver's side rocker panel is not quite as bad. It's still got a big hole in it, but it's not quite as bad as the passenger side. This is pretty solid through here. I can clean this up. Not as much. There's a little bit missing from that, but not enough to be concerned. I'll just grind it all down really good and then hit it with some rust stop, and then fill it with some foam, The only bad thing is the rust is in the spot I didn't want it. Here is okay, but when you get to here, I'm short because we cut this much out on the red one because it got hit right here. So we're gonna have a little bit of a gap, about that much, that we're gonna have to try to salvage a piece of this somewhere along the lines and then patch it, weld it, and then fill it. So we'll take a little piece of this, if there's anything salvageable, put it down through there, weld it in, and then fill it with some body panel filler. It's not bad up here, it's just right here. So, and then we have it right here. So the rest of it we'll be able to fix, but it just, we're missing kind of from right here to here. So kind of a bitch. So anyways, we'll have a little bit of a gap there to fill. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that it'll work out and we'll be able to do it without making too much of a mess. Today's the day. The roller's leaving. A little behind schedule, but and it's negative 14 degrees out, so that's always fun too. But peace out, bro. We have another cold weekend. I got a lot of hockey this weekend, but we're going to go ahead and keep working on this car, try to get the rocker panels cut off and remove all the rust, and then try to measure out, figure out how we're going to fit the new ones on there. What we have to do first is we are going to mask off, remove the front doors, mask off the inside of the car so we don't make it filthy, and then we will figure out where we want to cut. I think we'll probably start with rust removal and then see how high we need to cut it at that point. So let's go ahead and get to work. All right, got her all masked off. Should be okay here. If I cut it right to the edge of the rust, I might be able to salvage, and I think I will have enough, just barely. But I just went out and friggin' got a bunch of stuff, and now that I'm looking at this, I realize that I forgot to get a freaking silver marker. So I need to try to find a silver Sharpie or something to mark this with that's not scratching. But for now, I'm going to just cut up and cut out the rust, and then we'll match up the other one. So we'll cut all of this out along the rust line and then see how high we gotta set this to get it to work. So we'll go ahead and do that next, now that we got her masked off. All right, it is Sunday, post hockey, post basketball, post kids activities. Got the fender liner out of the way. There is a little sensor, relay sensor in the fender well. We're gonna have to take that off because I just don't want it affected by any kind of heat. from the welding. Ideally, I'm going to just cut it right along here, but what I'll do is, now that I have the interior masked off, I'm going to set up some lighting so we can see a little bit better, and then we'll probably just start by carefully removing the rust, and then at that point we'll see where we want, or how much of the rocker panel that we are going to want to use. Ideally, we would actually be able to butt it up in one of these seams. I think since this is up high enough, the rocker panel down here, that shape will fit pretty well in here, and then that'll help all these holes line up for the side skirt pins. So I don't necessarily need to cut this any higher than I have to. So I may end up just taking it across this line. This is all pretty good right here though, so I don't know. Let's see, that's pretty solid in there. I'm gonna have to decide whether or not I want to just patch this section, just like cut out this and patch that with that, and then come back and then maybe cut out this section right here and use like this as a guide to measure out the portion that I need from here forward. That way I'll have a little midsection right here to patch with up front if I need to. I think that's probably what I'll end up doing. Maybe just cut it, because this seems pretty good up to like right there. It's all pretty good right there, so I may be able to just clean that out really good and then start cutting like right, I don't know, let's see, right in here somewhere, like cut from here. That's good, but this is not, this is a weld right here, so I may salvage this weld and then just start cutting right here and cut up and across. I think that's probably what I'll do. All right, let's set up some lighting and shed a little light on this situation. Cut out that square, got in here pretty bad in there. I'm just gonna hit that with some filler. I'll rust proof it first, vacuum it, then rust proof it. I cut most of the dead metal out of there. It's just still a little jagged, but there's a hole back in there developing, and debris from inside this is collecting back there and rusting the inside of that out. So I'm going to fill that with, I'm going to spray the whole inside of this with rust proofing bed liner, and then fill it with expansion foam, and then I'll cut it down right here and we'll do a patch over top of that. Since it's covered with an actual weld, that should be fine. We just got to stop it from rusting further, and as you can see right here, that's in the fender well, so I'll have to maybe put a piece of metal in there and come on this side and hit it around the edges with the welder just to weld something in place right there. Or I could actually come from this side, but this side is kind of rusted too. So we'll have to clean all that out. and then assess what we want to do. Either way, I got to fill this and that so that it's rust proofed. But the primary bulk of the rust is cut out. Got this back corner. This is good, so we'll save that section. So this will just be one patch right here. Weld up through here, tack across this, and then a couple down here. And then we'll try to fill this the best we can and then send it. Here, we're going to cut straight up from right here and cut off right to about right there, and then take this straight across to meet up with this line. So we'll have a patch right here, and from here to here will be replaced. I may actually take a portion of this curvature right here so that we can make sure that it mates up correctly. But I'll get a silver marker and I'll mark that out, and maybe we'll put a notch right here so that it'll set into place and we know that all of our holes line up. So then we'll have a lot of extra on this piece to be able to patch if we have any need for patching. Like we might be able to use some up here, patch in this hole after we fill it. What else? Yeah, grind across that. This blade, you know, for 20 bucks, these things don't really last very long. A carbide blade, you would think, might last a little bit longer, and that's a Milwaukee too. But I swear to God, those things are way too expensive for their own good. We'll take a wire brush and a grinder across this to get all of that excess rust off. This actually works pretty dang good, so I may actually end up taking this, since it's kind of beat up, across all this just to get it down to bare metal, hit it with the wire brush and then prime it, and then hit it with the bed liner. For this, I have a section right there. You can see it. That section that I cut out before I let the other car go. So I could cut a portion off of that and just overlap it. Since it doesn't need to be sightly, it can be an unsightly weld. I can just cut out that where I've got those notches taken up, and then cut a piece of that to fit over top of that, and then I can just practice welding in on that, make sure that because it's a relative thickness, make sure I have my voltage and my amps set correctly before I actually do this stuff out here. So, but instead of replacing the entire thing, I think that's what we're gonna do. We'll just clean this out the best we can, and then we should be able to cut this piece to patch, and then we'll start tacking it in. I'm gonna continue cleaning this up. It's about 4 o'clock, so I still have time yet today. Might have to go grab another, I'm gonna get a can of rust stop and another carbide blade, and then come back and keep at it.
Baila conmigo bajo la luna, el ritmo calienta, siente la fortuna, de sol y fuego, pasión en la arena, tu movimiento es pura candela, fuego, fuego en el corazón, fuego, mueve, mueve sin condición, la noche llama, siente la explosión. Fuego, fuego, nuestra canción. Sun-kissed bodies dancing in the glow. Heat of the summer, letting it go. From the player to the disco lights, we keep it moving all through the night. Fuego, fuego en el corazón. Fuego, mueve, bebe sin condición.
All right. So it kept blowing out where that big gap was. So I just took a piece of scrap down there cut it so that it overlapped, and then set it so that it butted up really well, and then welded that on there. That seemed to work pretty good. So I'm gonna let this thing cool down for a second, and then I will run a bead across here and finish this up, and then we should be good. You got to leave these so that it can drain any water and moisture. So after we get that, I think this seam down here should be okay. We'll leave that. But now that we have a good seam here, that's pretty damn solid. And where I scratched it down through here, we're going to just weld across this, weld across that, and then we'll clean this up with the grinder and hit it with some primer to seal it. All right, so we got it all sealed up, got her patched, welded across here, cleaned up the holes that busted through, and then grinded it down. A couple little pinholes, but no big deal. That's pretty solid. So now I'll just go ahead and clean all this up and hit it with some spray or some primer so that I actually got some rust stop, so I'll coat all this with rust stop and spray it down in there, and then we should be able to go ahead and start fitting this piece across this section. Once we have it fitted, we'll make sure it's just right, and then we'll tack her in. Okay guys, so this is the finished internal. As you saw before, it was pretty rusted out, so I cut all the rust out and reinforced it and put a plate on it, and then grinded down the welds. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a piece of tape across the bottom here so I don't have to keep grinding the paint off, and along the edges of this, and then we'll hit this with the rust proofing, the rust stop spray paint, and then it should be good to go ahead and cover up.
Yeah. Stacks taller than the skyline, touch the clouds. Chain so heavy, neck dripping, make it loud. VIP, velvet ropes, living life so.
Okay, so I'm kind of to a point now where I need to think in steps. So I think what I'm going to do, since that is so rotted out in there, I mean, that's 2 layers of hole. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to get a piece of metal to cover this, and I'm going to plug this hole with steel stick, and then use this hole right there to fill with expansion foam, and fill that whole section with expansion foam. So I'm gonna figure out a couple pieces to patch this section up, and then once I get to that point, I'll spray the expansion foam and let it set up a little bit, and then once this hole is sealed, I should be able to grind this section off and then finish fitting this. The idea here is I've got this kind of cut out so that it is to shape for the most part, but there's a little overlap. As you can see, I etched along the edge. So my thought is I'm gonna have to cut this piece out so that it'll sit flush against there, and then grind that weld out. I mean, I just have to keep reminding myself it was gonna rust completely out and I was gonna have a hole in the car regardless. So either I try to do this, or it gets worse and looks like a rusty piece of shit with a ton of horsepower. So I guess I'll try. So that's the idea. I'm sure there's probably a better way to do this. For here, I am gonna have to get an extra piece of metal which I have right there, to put as a backer along this so that I can seal that seam and then grind it flat. Otherwise, this is just gonna flap around. But other than that, we're just gonna figure out this hole first. Once we have this hole sealed, then we will start fitting this to where we're gonna weld it, clamp it in place, and then throw a couple tacks on it. Okay, so this instills a little bit more confidence in me for the welding. So I slid a piece in, just an extra piece of metal, and then it fit so good in that hole, I decided to just tack it in there and zapped it a couple times around the edges. Now this is sort of what it's gonna look like up here. And what we'll be able to do if we zap it all the way around is go back with the grinder and grind those welds flat. And then at that point you tap it down to create a little bit of a recess, and then body filler to make it flat. So that actually went pretty dang good with the current settings. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just take some steel stick. I'm gonna pull this dead section out and then seal the seam along the edges up with steel stick all the way into the little crevice right there, so that that'll be completely sealed right there. And it's not on the back side, so it'll just seal all the way up to right there where the outer section butts in. So just down this seam, and that'll be sealed. So we'll do that, and then I have this piece of metal here that's kind of shaped a little bit to sit somewhat in there. Now I may actually reshape this to sit on the outside and fill it, and then just seal that hole with steel stick, and then just fill from this side. But I really want to get some back in there because there's a lot of rust and decay back in that a little bit farther, because this section that goes through here started to rust out. So I'd like to get some filler back in there. It's been primed as far as the paint would go, but I think just some filler in there to try to help block some moisture would be pretty good. And then we can put this on the outside and seal it up. But yeah, that's a good sign for sealing it up so far. And the fender liner comes down here, so I'm gonna rust proof all of this in here before I put that back. I got to finish taking the fender liner out, but all this will be rust proofed, and then you won't even really be able to tell that's there because it's going to be covered up. Yeah, got to keep moving because I got to go pick up my daughter here in about an hour and a half. I got to leave, so need to keep moving. All right, I sealed that up pretty damn good. Slid a piece in there, welded it over here and up here, all the way across the top, and then hit it a couple times there before it decided it wanted to blow out, but it didn't. So that's solid. And then there was a little seam with this little rust. I folded the rust piece over, folded it back this way, and ran steel stick all the way down that seam to seal it up. Before I folded that over, I took a little piece and contoured it to this curvature, brought it in here and slid it in right there, and then hit it with the welder and welded 2 or 3 spots on that. And then once it dried out, hit it with some carb cleaner in here, wiped it out, hit it with a wire brush a couple times, and then cleaned it all out and put steel stick down the other side of this fold all the way down the seam, and then spread it out over top of the weld so that it's perfectly flat. And now that's hardening up pretty damn good. That'll be perfect as far as the seal goes. There's nothing exposed back here, no rust, a little bit of surface starting, but this issue was sealed up. There was a little gap right here that I went ahead and filled in so that once I weld the new piece on right here, it would not be exposed to the weather. So this whole corner is now fully sealed up. And then what I'll do is I will go ahead and I'll pop this little rubber thing out after I seal this hole, and I will spray through there with my expansion foam. And this won't be completely sealed. I'll be able to get a little bit in here. This piece that I've got for that section will cover probably everything but right here. So I'll be able to fill that. I'll be able to put it up in this hole and fill, and then in that hole, and that'll fill that whole section up pretty good. So I think I might actually contour this so that I can just tack weld it to the outside, maybe just below this seam, so that it'll cover up the majority of that hole, and then I can fill the rest of it with expansion foam. So I think that's the game plan. Then I'll come back with truck bed liner. I'm not going to rubberize coat this. I'm just going to hit it again after everything's sealed on this piece with primer, because I don't want the rubberized truck bed liner to catch on fire when I'm welding this outside piece. Even though it's not going to be direct, it could catch along here, and then this would be my oxygen source, and it would burn up the inside of the car, cause a fire, and we don't want that. So, but for the most part, this is going pretty smooth. Got this whole section cleaned up, all the rust eliminated, and the holes are sealed. And I'm quite proud of that, having seen what it looked like before. So, yeah, gonna go ahead and continue working on this, get a good piece to fit the majority of this, potentially tack weld it in, and then we'll hit this with expansion foam from this side here and here to fill this whole corner and insulate any other little micro holes that we might have had from any kind of future moisture. All right, so this is our patch. That's our hole. Just made it out of, flattened out a piece of the extra scraps that I had. You can see the other patch that I slid through that side. That's nice and hard now, sealed up. So this one, I was able to fit to the contour. And it should go just like that. And I'll tack it across the top and the side. Well, at first I'll do across the top, right through that top seam, and then I may have to shave that corner off, actually, now that I look at it. So, but essentially I'll tack the top in and the exposed areas across the top there, and then maybe once on the bottom, and then I can fill from there. Once I fill everything with the expansion foam, then I will come back and use steel stick to seal that small hole up right there. And then the internal work will be done on the driver's side. All right, we got the patch in. It went all right up here. Kind of a pain in the ass down there. I don't know if it was just the surface or whatever, but it's in there. So what I'll do is I'll take some steel stick and go around the edges where I couldn't reach with the welder to seal that off, and especially back here so that moisture will seal out of there. I mean, there's gonna be some that gets in there, but really this is just overall just for structural integrity and to seal up a big freaking gaping hole. So what I'll do is I'm gonna go ahead and steel stick this around the edges, clean it up a little bit, steel stick it, and then we'll come back in. I gotta go run some errands, but we'll come back after that and start filling this area with the expansion foam. All right, got a little carried away and OCD, trying to get it close, but I may have shaved just a nut hair off. A little too much down here, but that can be feathered. Overall, for the shape, that's about as good as it's gonna get. I'm too afraid to shave any more off, and I don't want to end up with too little because then I'll be screwed. I don't have another piece. So I think what I'll do is I'll tack it in up here and maybe here and here, and then try to get one in here somewhere, and then get a piece of backing like this or something to, or this, to slide up in right there. I just don't know how I'm gonna hold it together. So, but I gotta figure out a way to get this one up inside there. When I push it up though, there's a little bit of a gap. So we gotta tack those two together somehow. I may have to pull this down just slightly and try to finesse a backing piece underneath that so that I can make sure that it's secure, a solid weld right there, like a bridge. Here, it's just gonna be a little sloppy. I'll try to tack along that as good as I can. Then we'll tap it down and feather it, and try to level that out a little bit. It's covered up to here with the side skirt. So as long as I can get the side skirt on, which this lines up here, so these should be good, and so should this. For the most part, I mean, it's only maybe off by like a millimeter or two, but overall it's pretty solid cut. I tried to angle this piece so that it's set flat, but once I get the welds in there, I can just grind it all pretty flat. I'm just a little nervous going into it. I don't want to blow through metal. So they say flux core is not the best to use with this, but that's all I got. So we'll go ahead and try to tack this on here, see how bad we fuck it up. All right, the weld got a little bit sloppy, but I tacked everything in and then went around and ground everything off. The only thing that I haven't hit is the bottom there, and honestly, not really sure if I'm going to. I kept blowing through and then finally got a good bead like right in here and took it all the way around. Then when I was grinding it off, got a little too close and cut through right there, so I may use some body filler right there. I'll feather the rest of it out, but for the most part, that whole piece, it's in there, baby. So what I'll do is I'll go around this with some Bondo body filler and then sand it down real good, make sure it's nice and level everywhere, and then finish it with some finishing body filler and sand the whole section down, and it should be ready for a primer. All right, so I put the first layer of Bondo on there. I'm gonna call it a night, grind it off everything, and then put the first layer. I think that'll do just fine for layer one. Then I'll sand that off tomorrow, and then try to get it as level as I can with some finishing body filler. It's especially hard right in here, so just made sure that it was coated, and there was a hole right here that it filled pretty good, so I'm sure I'll have to do 2 coats of regular body filler and then 1 coat of finishing. Tried to seal up the edges too, so I'll clean all that up and then we'll put another coat of that on there tomorrow to try to fill any air holes and get it a little more cleaned up, and then move on to patching that section. Hopefully this went, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10 as far as how smooth it went. I didn't actually get it to weld halfway decent without blowing through until I turned that thing completely down as far as it would go, just because the metal's so thin. But overall, I think that's going to turn out pretty damn good, especially for a patch. And then like I said before, now that we're done welding, we'll come in tomorrow morning and hit that hole right there with some filler, some expansion foam, fill the inside of that thing so that it weather seals it, and then put a second coat on this and start working on that. Hopefully we'll get that piece ready. Ideally tomorrow. I'd like to, since I have a little more concentrated time, tomorrow I'd like to get that section fitted, welded in, and then Bondo, and then prep this whole side so that I'm ready to paint it. All right, welcome back. It is Friday. Got a little concentrated time this morning. Last night made some decent progress. As you saw, we got Bondo in there. Should be all dried up by now. Ready to sand it off and see how much more of a second coat we need to put on there before we do the skim coat. Or I have a couple different options. I have some high quality finishing coat, and I have just a Bondo squeeze bottle of finish glazing putty, which I may try that out, see how it works. But this is where we got yesterday. So we got the corner all welded in, tapped down, and then Bondoed. Looks fairly straight. Hole's not plugged for the side skirt. Bondo is pretty dry, so I'm gonna take some 60 grit, try to knock that down, maybe 80 grit first, see how that works. Knock it down, even it out, clean up this area, and then do a second lighter coat of just the finishing Bondo coat or a skim coat of glazing putty. Next, we're going to use this, or fit this section right here. I've got it taped off because I didn't want the kids to fall into it if they came out here, get their shoes on. But migrated some of the supplies and tools over. And yeah, from this angle, it kind of looks like it goes up a little bit. I don't think that'll be noticeable once the side skirt's on there. It's really just rust prevention, but it does look kind of like it goes up a little bit from this angle. Maybe not. Might just be the bend in the metal. Might need to fill that a little bit more and level it out. But either way, as long as it's sealed, it should be good. I think I'm going to hit this hole back here with some expansion foam to try to seal up the inside of that where there was still rust. Everything should be coated, but there were some areas that I had to sand off, and I'm sure some of it burnt off whenever I was welding. So I'll go ahead, hit that with some expansion foam, tape off the holes so it doesn't bulge out of the holes, and then start sanding on this corner. Once I get that corner kind of cleaned up, I will go ahead and start fitting that middle piece and see if we can't get that fitted today.
Yeah. Stacks taller than the skyline, touch the clouds. Chain so heavy, neck dripping, make it loud. VIP, velvet ropes, living life so wild. Pockets looking pregnant, my money birthed a child. Lit like a chandelier, vibe too insane. Big bottles popping, drown in the champagne.
Okay, cleaning up pretty dang good.
Whole squad got vision, we in our own lane. Wrist doing laps like Olympics. don't want this force. Night turning lava, streets on fire, energy explosive, push it higher. Diamonds dancing crazy, no liar. We own the night, city saviors admired. Live like a chandelier, vibe too insane. Big bottles popping, drown in the champagne. Whips outside, growling and just spit flame. Whole squad got vision, we in our own lane. Money monopoly, the block is embossed. Took the L's and turned them to a win-loss cost. Cash machines, humming bands ain't soft. Street dreams packaged, no matter the cost.
All right, so I got the second coat here of glazing putty on, backfilled it. I should be able to level this all out. Kind of put it on a little bit thick again, but I should be able to sand this out. I'm gonna go grab some hook and loop, 120 and 220, so that I can use the sanding block on this. And it'll probably take about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I did go ahead and expansion foam the hole, and I plugged that up, and then I taped this. So I think a good indicator is right there, that it's pushed through where we did the welding work back there. So that's good. And then everything on the outside here, like we said before multiple times, it'll have the truck bed coating on it. So, but yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and run and grab a mixing board and some brake cleaner and a couple other things, and by the time I get back, this should be dry. All right, I decided to actually do a little fitting before I broke my concentration. Probably a good idea to get to work on this a little bit and at least get it fitted. So
jungle rules the night. Shadows sharp like switchblade knives. Run or fight, no room to think. Blood on pavement paints the ink. We're the wolves, howl on the prowl. Siren songs won't make us bow. Steel and flames beneath the moon. Chaos rises, coming soon.
all right, hopefully we got most of that. I'm not sure how zoomed in it was, but we got this piece cut. I marked up here where the holes were, and we were able to actually, I would pick it up and fit it right now, but I put some rust sealant on there, and then I'll coat that once it dries. Just some primer. I got to go grab some primer, but basically we'll have overlap right here. So I think what I'll do is I'll cut this back, and then we'll have a notch right here where that slides in. It'll basically just notch out right here and up, and we're going to bring it up to about right here, cut along this line to straighten this out, and then straight down this way. And then basically, because this cuts back in a little bit right here, but it is on a weld, so I'm going to square this off from that weld point right there and bring it up right here, and then one angle all the way across down to there. Coated the inside ran out of primer, so I just used caliper paint and then went over top of it with the rust converter. So that should be all good, all coated inside there. And then looks like expansion foam did its job down there. That should be pretty solid inside there now. Yep. So all we got to do is sand that off, but we're good on this corner for a minute. I'm going to get this welded in and we'll coat this with some Bondo, and then we'll go back, sand this off and get it to the same spot as this one is, and we'll clean it all up and prep that whole thing for paint. So I'm going to have to pull this off and move it on the inside, I think. Either that or tape it off along this joint right here, so that I can try to blend it. Yeah, we'll have to see how that works out. All right, well, it went from 12 to 4 p.m. real freaking quick, but we got this thing fitted. I got the welder on, cleaned up the edges way better than I did the other piece. Should be able to get that in there, hold it in place, and then tack weld one side, which is what I'm gonna have to do because this one doesn't fit quite as easy as the other one. So we'll get it in there. I'll tack it in a couple spots, let it cool off, and then I think on the other side, since I have the whole one, I'm just gonna take the whole thing out. I think it'll go a lot quicker if I just have weld points up here, over there, and across here, or across here, and then just on the bottom. Yeah. Anyways, I haven't even got to sanding down the back corner yet, but we'll get this piece in, and thankfully it's below the side skirt line, so won't be able to see it as long as the mounts match up. Let's go ahead and get this fucker welded in. All right, got a little delivery while we were at it. A couple Temu string lights. I got 10 of those bitches on Temu for like 25 bucks. So I just hung them with little chains that came with them, and then they all link together up the shoe rack. Gave myself a hell of a lot more light. I still got a whole freaking box full of them, so I'm gonna have to do something about the lighting in here. Maybe we'll set up some string lighting for when we paint, so we're not gonna miss any spots. But little update on the weld, went pretty damn good. I do have a little bit of a lip here, which is annoying considering the amount of time I spent fitting, but I may be able to tap that down. I don't think that welds very strong. Yeah, and that's pretty good right there. So this is all flush. It's pretty good over here. But since it's such a long piece, I started, I think, like right in here. Did 1, 2, 3, and then came over here and did 1, 2, 3, and it was pretty stuck. So then came back over here since it was cooled off, did a couple more. Came back over here, did a couple more, let this side cool off, and then went ahead and hit the front a little bit. So these are all pretty good into place. I think I might have to hold this down or pound that in a little bit, and then it's actually pretty good now that I push down on it. So I may actually tap that down a little bit more and then put a couple more right here, and then I should be good to run a bead down the side. But there is something to be said for making sure it's perfectly clean, and I even took some of the Flux Weld anti-spatter nozzle gel and put it along the seam before I started. It seemed to help. Run it on super low volts so I don't blow through it, but I did actually blow through right in here. But for the most part, hell of a lot better than the corner piece, I think, because it was a lot cleaner metal. But I'm gonna keep going on this because I got some stuff to clean up outside before it gets dark. It's like 5 o'clock. So, all right, we got her welded in. Welder did great for flux core. You can see where it was, you know, pretty hot, but not too hot. Some spots got really hot, but overall, I don't think there was much in the way of warping. Everything seemed to line up pretty good. The lines here and here are pretty good. I was able to get all the way underneath because the lines are so clean, and then did some of the spot welds there. Next move is to grind this off without cutting through. So I got a little bit of grinding to do, and we'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like after the grinding's done and we're ready to apply some filler. All right, got it all grinded down. Couple little gaps, air holes. All those will seal up though once we put some filler on it. But should work pretty good. Especially for the patch. I mean, pretty damn good. All right, it is a gorgeous Sunday. Didn't have any chance to work on this on Saturday. Super busy with kids stuff, but we are back in the garage. Friday night, I was able to get that knocked down to the point to where I could put a coat of Bondo on it. So the first order of business is going to be sanding that down, seeing if any welds are protruding, and then put some skim coat on it like this one and try to get it all shaped out over here so that we can put some primer on it and call it good until we're ready to paint. Think I'll probably tape it off along the edge there, and then up that side so that we don't have to paint inside the car any more than we have to. But then, yeah, once we get it sanded out, then we can go ahead and prime it. Move on to the passenger side. All right, so we sanded down to a, I want to say 320 on the Bondo, and then had some air spots, obviously, first coat. No protruding welds, which is good. So then came across it with some glazing putty. Now this section is drying, and I'm going to go ahead and hit this with, I believe this is a 220, knock it down just slightly, and then take it to a 400. A little bit of a jump, but unless it's a 320, this might be a 320, but we're gonna just soft block this section right here with a 320 and then go to a 400, and then we should be able from that point to wipe it down. Have maybe one more spot right in here to hit with some extra glazing putty, but I should only have to do some touch up, and then I should be good to prime this section. All right, I think we are to the point now where we can prime it. I've got it all taped off, semi-masked, went over it probably 3 more times and put some level coats on it, and then sanded the shit out of it. So hopefully this is good. Everything feels smooth, so next step will be just hitting this with some primer and letting that dry. All right, so we threw some primer on there. So far, the only spot I can see is right here. It's a little bit low. So I can hit that with some 400 and then use some glazing putty and fill that to level it out. Aside from that, everything else, you can see where the putty was. There's a little low spot right there. Can fill that. It's a good thing about using this primer because it brings out the imperfections a lot more than the multicolor metal and filler. So doing the single coat is pretty good. You can see the seam there. Once we hit that with another coat of primer, you shouldn't be able to see any of that. But we'll fill this, and then we'll fill that divot over here. Doesn't look like there's any obvious spots. I mean, other than kind of right there on the edge, right here. But I think I might pick this out because see how the layers are up here, and then I filled that. Or I might cut that body filler out. But for the most part, once I hit that, you'd be able to see a little bit of a step there, but not really much. We're about done with this side. I think for tomorrow, I'll just do those couple little air spots, and this will be good to take the masking off, put the doors back on, and then we can address this section right here. Should be able to just grind that out real good and put some body filler in there. And then this little small section that goes inside, it stops right at the edge, so should be able to just grind that out, put some body filler in that, and this side should be done. All right, last day of my time off that I have here to concentrate on this car. Everything came out pretty level, but when I hit the primer on this one last night, I noticed a glare, and there was a line right there on the seam, and wanted to try to eliminate that as much as possible. So this morning I went ahead and mixed up some of my I got a little higher quality finishing body filler that I filled that line with, maybe a little bit more than I needed, but I'm going to hand sand that off with my finger down that little curvature. There's a curvature right here you can see, and I think with the block it created a bit of a line across that. So now that I have it refilled, I'll just take a piece of 500, wrap it around my finger, and then just basically stroke down that body line to try to get it to be a little less abrupt and take the line out of it, because that's right as you get into the car, and the side skirt I think only comes up to here. So everything else came out pretty darn good. There was a little dip right here, so I filled that. Aside from that, this section is really good. It turned out great. There's a couple little primer runs, but cleaned those up really well. And then I'll just flat sand this out once it's completely dry. In the meantime, I'm gonna try to set up the other side of the garage. Need to make a little bit more space here, so not sure what I'm gonna do with this front bumper. Don't necessarily want to open the garage to put it in the back of the car, so have to find a safe spot for that so it doesn't get damaged, and try to figure out a spot for this bike. I might have to move everything up here, but that also kind of limits my access to my supplies, which are right there. So got a little configuring to do, and then we're going to take some extra lights like we did over there and put them up over here all along this wall so that I can have a nice lighted spot over here as well. Those will also come into play on both sides whenever we start painting. So I may actually just string a couple up along this section. Just got to be cognizant of the garage door hang, so because we use the garage door multiple times every single day. So yeah, anyways, we're gonna go ahead and try to reorganize this section while that's drying over there, get some lights hung, and get this area ready so that I can sand that section off, hit it with some primer, remove these doors, mask this area off, and remove this. The goal for the day today is to get this section of rocker panel off and cut, and then this one fitted so that I can weld it into place. So I'll go ahead and get to work on that. All right, so that body filler got a hell of a lot harder than I anticipated it getting. So it took me a minute to sand that down, but filled that little divot, make it a little less noticeable, hit it with some primer. Overall, this whole section has got about 2 coats of primer on it, and it's looking pretty dang good. Still a little divot right there from the weld, but the body line up here looks good. Most of that's going to get covered up to the overlap there with side skirt, so I'm not too worried about this as I am this section. So this all turned out pretty dang good. This one I reworked the line, and there's a lot less like abrupt line. I sanded on that with some 150, then some 220, and then at the finish with 500. So it should be a lot less noticeable by the time all of that dries. It's still wet with primer, so I'll hit that 2 or 3 times. You can see where I put, if you catch that glare, where we put the new filler in right there. So a little less abrupt over here. Move the bike out of the way, got plenty of space. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this area up and get it ready for a rust overload. I'm vacuuming it all up. I got shit all over the place from the car, but I think I'll go ahead and pop this wheel off, take the fender liner out, and then figure out, hopefully that primer will dry pretty quickly so I can throw these doors on, take these doors off, put them over here. I may go ahead and just take those doors off and get it masked and ready, and then put them over here. By the time I get this all prepped up over here, then I should be good to throw those doors on. And then we can commence cutting this off. All right, we got the doors taped up. Now we got to throw some plastic on there, seal it up. Doors are off. Got them over here. This side still pretty lit up. Should be good to maybe put another coat on that. Had to open up the garage door, let some of the natural heat in. It's about 60 degrees today. So anyways, we'll go ahead and hit another coat of primer on that real quick, and then do the plastic on the doors. All right, so outer wasn't too bad. For the sake of not cutting any more off than I had to, but also exposing the entire inner, I did the notch method here and then just grinded down to where it was weldable right there. I'll hit that with some rust stop rust converter, as they call it. And then, but the inner panel is pretty well gone. Let me just get down here where I can show you. But the entire bottom section of that inner panel is gone. So I don't have the whole thing. I just have that small section over there. So I don't know what I'm gonna do other than maybe I could do a couple different things. I could chop it into 2 pieces, put one here and put one down there and leave the rest of it open. Or I could order one. Like I can't find them like just by themselves. I can only find them in a set, and that's $200. Or I guess I could call the junkyard and see, but I don't think they're going to be able to get just that to me. The alternative would be just to take the whole piece and put it in the middle, and then try to get creative as far as sealing the rest of that off. But it's not completely sealed anyways. I would just want to seal the bottom right here from any more moisture getting up in. So I could also try to do that, maybe patch some of the holes. There's a couple little holes on the inside, like here and here, and down there. But this inner is quite a bit more involved than the other one. Thankfully, this lip is still pretty good, so I should be able to clean that off and weld to it. But as you can see, there's so much stacked on here, the rocker panels aren't really going to sit on that correctly. They'll be at the wrong angle if I don't figure out a solution to the inner situation. So also cutting the majority of that out is going to be a pretty big bitch. So I'm going to finish cutting most of this out, try to get a straight line across here, and then clean up this edge. And then you know what, I may get most of the corrosion off of this, straighten it out, and then just leave some of that stacked on there so the rocker panel will sit correctly. That could also be an option. But anyways, I got to finish cleaning it out. I just had to dig all this shit out of there. Like that's so much rust. And that's all inner rocker panel for the most part. So I'm going to vacuum it out, clean up this mess, do a little preliminary cleanup, and then just keep on digging at it. Okay, I'm pretty well migrated to the other side. I got the welder warming up. Got this all rust converted throughout here, all sprayed down really good with the rust converter. So next step, I have these. I took my piece of metal, split it in half, and I'm going to put this piece right here. We'll just right here, and I'll just do a couple spot welds. Those holes that I drilled right here and down here will be the spot welds, and then I'm going to take this piece and weld it in, I think right there, so that I'll have a spot to weld this to, because there's a lot of space between this and this. As you can see, it's sandwiched with an extra piece of metal right there. So we're gonna need a little bit more here. So I'll put this right here, another piece right here, and a piece right here. And that way it'll be insulated all across there. So I'm gonna grind this down to bare metal again, and then I will weld this on and then cut it off, and then weld another piece here and cut it off, and the last piece right in here. And that way I'll have welds all the way across this and a good spacer for this. All right, here is an update. Cleaned everything up inside, got all of the loose metal out. And since I didn't have an entire piece, I had one section about this long, and I don't need the upper, I just need the lower, so I cut it in half. I used one piece right here, as you can see. Took a couple pieces, welded those, drill welded those, spot welded behind it as a backer to strengthen that, and then put this piece on and welded to those new metal pieces here and here, and then ran some right there on a clean piece and right here. So that's pretty fucking solid. I had another little piece that I put right there as a brace for this metal piece that comes down. I guess that's maybe a joint to the inner. And then I had this piece that was in a little bit more of a corroded area, but I managed to get some welds to stick up here and up there and along here. I'll have to clean these welds up before I put the rocker pant, the outer on. But I was able to pull all of this forward and weld to it. And then we have a couple little holes up here that will fill after all the welding is done. I'm going to use some expansion foam, so I'll hit the whole inside of this, all inside of this with primer. It's already been rust stopped, but we'll hit it all with primer. And then the last piece, once that primer dries, is this piece, which oddly enough kind of fits right over top of that rust hole. So this will go right in there. Kind of like that. And then I'll weld those two seam together, and then tack it along the bottom here and in the back, and that should seal it up. Well, not seal it up, but that should brace it back up from most of the rust pieces that blew out. So before I weld this last piece in though, I'm gonna clean this up a little bit, make that more of a straight angle, and then clean off the contact points. I may have some issues getting the weld. Oh no, that's pretty solid right there, so it'll stick to that. But before I do that, I'm gonna prime everything inside while I have some open space, and then I'll come back next time I have time to work on this, probably next weekend, and we'll finish up this section and then start fitting the outer. All right guys, that is going to be it for driver's side rocker panel. Tack sanded it with some 500, pulled the masking off. Now I just need to blend that, sand it all down, blend it. I'll probably end up having to prime that whole lower section a couple times with some black paint, but really just sand out these lines because you can feel that primer line. So knock down those lines so that you can't feel it, sand the whole section, hit it with some paint, and then 2 or 3, maybe 4 coats of black on that, and then 2 coats of clear. So, but this side turned out pretty damn good, I think, for what it was. Still have to sand off this patch right here, but those are just some jank patches. I actually got a little smarter with my masking on the passenger side, so I don't have to go back and redo it because this side is not set up to paint. These lines down here need to be up higher, and I need to actually seal off the doorways so I can blend it a little bit better, or if anything, just move the tape lines up all the way inside so that I can use this line as the blend line along the edges of the doors. So got all the rust out, got the old rocker panel off. No lights over here anymore. Actually, here we go. Got them set up. Primed the inside. Still have to do some patching back here. Not sure how detailed I'm gonna get with that. I'll definitely have to do that side. There's a big hole back there, so we'll have to seal that off. So we'll have to get creative on that with the extra metal that we have, as well as got the inner rocker panel all pieced together and primed. So for the most part, inner rocker panel is done. I just got to weld that piece in right there, back here, and then we'll do some patching the next time we have some concentrated time to work on it. But for the most part, that's going to be a wrap for this video. I feel like we got a ton done in this video, so I'll try to condense it down so that it's not an hour long, but a little less time lapse, a little more progression. So trying to hit high gear on this thing. We did get the turbo in. It's in a box over there. I'll do a short on that. I did post a live, not sure if it uploaded or not, but shout out to Matt from Turbo Bay. Yeah, Turbo Bay in Florida. Really rad dude, helped me out. Kind of got in a pinch with it, but ultimately ended up having to pay twice for it. But what I got is badass. So as soon as this rocker panel's done, then we get to move on to the injectors, the fuel pump, and the new turbo. So anyways, thanks for watching. As always, like, subscribe, peace.